an op-ed that I wrote for the Business Day last year, I suggested that unethical behavior is contagious. It's like a virus. It's a concept that I borrowed from Dan Ariely, the eminent behavioral economist, and I think that it powerfully characterizes South Africa's current situation. Unethical behavior, like dishonesty, greed, and corruption, can contaminate business, government, and society. It's set off by the exposure to the bad behavior of others, and the effect is insidious, passing from one person to the next until there is a deterioration in the collective ethical norm. So what was once completely unacceptable behavior gradually becomes possible and eventually becomes endemic. And you have a kind of new normal. You know, there's that well-known story about the frog in the pot. You put the frog in the pot and you gradually increase the temperature. The frog gets slowly desensitized until it boils to death. So the story actually isn't scientifically true. It's shown that if you increase the temperature, the frog sensibly jumps out before it gets too hot. But I think that it's still a powerful metaphor, and it serves to illustrate well the creeping effect of the ethical virus. Now, studies show that the bad actions of leaders are especially contagious. They have a remarkable capacity to influence others. And that's why the damage that they inflict goes far beyond the direct financial cost of their greed, their dishonesty, and their corruption. To quote George Orwell, unethical leaders play with fire without realizing that fire is dangerous. But there's a flip side to moral contagion. The susceptibility to influence can also be positive. Just as unethical behavior poses a threat, so does ethical behavior present an opportunity. The good conduct of individuals, especially leaders, can have an extraordinarily far-reaching effect on others, helping to shape their views on what's acceptable and what's not, and influencing, ultimately, their actions. And this is because moral truths are most persuasively conveyed not when they're taught, but when they're lived, when they're embodied in our personal behaviors. In this light, I think that we can perhaps better appreciate the deeper significance of courageous moral leadership. It isn't only needed to halt the spread of unethical behavior. It also sets a high-profile example that can inspire the behavior of others. In South Africa, we're now at a critical juncture. The unethical virus has spread into the heart of our society. But the exciting and empowering news, I think, is that powerful forces for good are standing up and resisting. There are leaders from government, business, and wider society who have not remained passive, but have assumed moral responsibility. They are committed to serve South Africa through ethical leadership and effective governance of public and private sector institutions. They've embraced what Chief Justice Mogoeng, speaking at GIBS last year, called a national imperative. For the business community, ethical leadership could be crucial to securing the long-term conditions for its success. Such an approach is the opposite of finger-pointing, of the complacent belief that the fault lies entirely with others. As Rul Khoza and others have emphasized in our forums, corruption isn't only a public sector problem. Ethical leadership is the opposite of the view that the corporation is an amoral entity whose sole purpose is the short-term maximization of shareholder wealth. Business leaders who've participated in our forums, people like Nikki Newton-King, Bonang Mogale, Mark Lamberti, Tandy Olaine, who's here tonight, and Bobby Godsall, have all in different ways spoken about the need for a more long-term, stakeholder-orientated approach, or an approach that goes beyond CSI, merging financial and social imperatives, or an approach that boldly and creatively addresses societal challenges and seeks collaboration to generate collective impact, much in the spirit of the CEO initiative. These approaches, I think, are especially critical in South Africa, given the desperate socio-economic problems that we face. And ethical leadership is the opposite of what Bobby Godsall calls internal migration, the decision to continue living in South Africa while effectively giving up on it and dissociating oneself from its challenges. The purpose of our think tank is to make a significant practical contribution, to encourage ethical behavior which builds trust and in turn promotes success. Inhlanhla Nene and Laurie Dippenauer were two of our panelists at our forum in September. At the end of the discussion, Laurie made a comment that drew loud and spontaneous applause from the audience. He said that when the history of South Africa is recorded, the courageous moral stand of the former finance minister will go down as one of its most significant chapters. As we all know, the same could be said of our current deputy finance minister. At the launch of our think tank in May of last year, I spoke about South Africa's capacity to produce extraordinary leaders. Whereas we often lament the widespread ethical failures in our country, what I think is less acknowledged is how we are also blessed with many leaders who have remarkable intellectual, professional, and ethical credentials. The think tank's aim is to leverage the talents and reputations of these leaders, providing a platform to develop thought leadership and to influence business practices in South Africa. The Deputy Minister is, as we all know, a prime example of such a leader. He proves the falsehood of that old cynical saying, every man has his price. So many South Africans are so appreciative that he's part of the outstanding leadership team at the helm of our economy, and we at GIBS are delighted and honored that he's speaking here tonight.